I'm so excited to be here and talk about a topic that's super important to me and I'm super passionate about communication. And I love communication because it informs everything we do, every relationship, whether you're in a large group or you're talking to your parents, your kids, your spouses, your boss, your coworkers. It's, started wars, it ended wars. Miscommunication is probably the biggest problem that most of us have on a day-to-day basis. And so I love communication. I'm super passionate about it. And what is amazing is that anyone can be an effective communicator. Sometimes you think like, oh, I don't, I don't, I wasn't born with that gift, but what's awesome about communication is that it can be learned through hard work, practice, and you can improve. So just a little bit about me. I spent 10 years in media, in print media, having my own business, had partners. I now am with a wood electrician. This is our employees. We have about 150 workers. It's a family business, um, and so we have in the last 20 years, I really grown as a communicator. For me personally, I was always painfully shy. You might not think that knowing me now, but I was totally an introvert. Was afraid to raise my hand in class, had a hard time making friends. And now I just can't stop talking because it's so important. And so with these two businesses that I've spent in the last 20 years, I've really gotten to talk to a lot of people, from kids to CEOs, and you really have to be able to navigate different situations. And you're forced to communicate with people and become a good communicator. So here's a quote from a CEO, Pat McMillan: "Excellent communication doesn't just happen naturally. It is a product of process, skill, climate, relationship, and hard work." And so what I love about this is it has all the ingredients of how you can become a good communicator, or not a good communicator, an effective communicator. And so we'll talk a little bit about each of these things today. So the first is process. So it's so important to plan. I think we sometimes think we can just like wing it and go into something. Even when we're talking one on one with somebody, we think, oh, I gotta talk to them about this thing. But I always plan. I always write things down. I'll even like role play and rehearse it in my head from the start of the conversation when they sit down in my office to how it might play out. So I'm always thinking about what I want to say so I can get my message across. So if you fail to plan to fail, as the old saying goes. Um, the other thing it's important to think about is your target audience. So we have a little clip here. See if it'll play. Sorry, other groups. So this is this is one of the visits that we did with Echelon's Red Pencil project, and
It's very good.
yeah, I was struggling there. I will say. uh, yeah, it's kind of funny. But
It goes.
if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Okay, so yeah. So target audience. So we had this visit with third graders at Koloala School with our Red Pencil project, and of course, it's like, well, what do third graders want to hear? Like, what will get them excited? And of course, it's Bruno Mars's APT, right? So we got them going. We played the song. We had them do a little exercise warm up, and it really just got them excited about what we had to say, and open them up to, oh, okay, maybe these people are kind of cool and they do kind of get it. So um, just thinking about your target audience. And then yeah, KISS. So I don't know if anybody knows what this acronym stands for. Yeah, exactly. So this was one of the foundational KISS, excuse me for saying stupid, but keep it simple, stupid. So this is one of the foundational things I learned from journalism school, and keeping things simple, whether it's written communication or spoken communication, just keeping one simple message, not making things too complex, because people have short attention spans. They won't retain a lot of knowledge. And so having one single message that in your mind of what you want to be able to communicate is so important, because people will forget. most of what we tell them. So it's super important whenever I talk to somebody, I'm like, okay, what is the one thing I want them to remember? And especially when I'm talking, with some of our employees, it's like, okay, what is the one thing I need them to take away from this meeting? And so I'll try to hammer that in as much as I can and not stray too far from that message, because then you won't retain anything, right? So the process, super important. The second thing is skill. So, like I mentioned before, I love communication because it is a skill. It's not something that you're necessarily born with. Of course, there are natural gifted speakers, but communication is a skill that you can get better at, you can work hard at and practice and become more effective. So just a couple of things to help you to become more of an effect to develop the skill set of becoming a more effective communicator. Um, One, use a visual aid, tell a story, play a game. And so one of the things I always try to think of when I'm doing a message or it's a speech somewhere is, what is something that I can do that will make it stick? That is not just the message, but can they actively do something or participate in something so that they'll remember what my message is? So, for example, I have a picture of my dirty shoes here. And this was at another visit that we did for our Red Pencil project. And we talked about compassion, right? And so compassion is basically putting yourself in another person's shoes. So I went up there in front of these third grade students with no shoes on, in my socks. Good thing my socks were clean. I didn't have any pukas that day. But I was like, what would you guys do if you saw me and I didn't have any shoes? Like, how do you think I would feel? And one kid in the front, he actually raised his hand and he took off his shoes and he ran up and he gave them to me and he said, "Here, you can have my shoes." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so amazing, these third grade kids." But just to provide something visual, something memorable, so they remember, oh, compassion, shoes. So whether it's playing a game or again doing something memorable, so using humor, stats, graphics, pictures, again it's identifying your target audience and what would be the most effective way to communicate with them. So kids, it might be humor or a song. If you're in a boardroom or talking to CEOs, it might be with graphs or stats, hard line numbers. And so you just have to consider those methods, the different methods of communication when you're talking to different groups. Okay, number three, climate. And I love this video of the peanuts because, I don't know if you're familiar, but this is like when the teacher's talking to them and the teacher's like, wah, 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 and they're just like, you know. And so thinking about the climate, right? Where are we speaking? But also the environment we're creating for communication. Are we creating an environment that encourages dialogue that fosters dialogue, or that shuts it down? And so, really, just thinking about your environment, making sure that it's comfortable for people, that they're not afraid to speak out. I think that's a lot of times why it was for me when I didn't want to raise my hand in class. It was like, maybe I'm going to say something dumb. So, creating an open environment that really just fosters dialogue. And so, there's this um, study that was done by a fellow named Moravian, and he has this 7-38-55 communication model. And so what he found is that 7% of communication is words. So the words that we're speaking, it's only 7% of communication. 38% is tone, or how we're saying something. And 55% is body language, right? It's just what you're doing with your body, not anything that's coming out of your mouth, which was so fascinating to me. And so your body language, how you're saying something, that can create an environment that either fosters dialogue or stifles it. And so just being aware of your non-verbal communication, are you like looking at your phone, looking at your watch, like rolling your eyes, like that creates an environment that people might not feel comfortable with, because it's like you don't value anything I have to say, right? So being aware of your body language, leaning in, nodding, making eye contact, practicing active listening. So making sure you're asking questions. You're really just not just hearing like these peanuts kids hearing sounds, but you're actually listening to what they're saying, how they're saying it, and then looking at their body language too. So that all can create a climate that can help to foster dialogue. The fourth thing is relationship. So this goes into that idea of creating that climate, right? Building rapport, a sense of connection, establishing trust, and this is so important whether you're in a big audience, but especially in small one-on-one scenarios. And so I'll do whatever I can to build trust with our employees, whether it's meeting them for lunch or asking them how their family is, how you got to know your friends and spouses, right? It's like you have to talk to them, not necessarily about work or about, you know, how their performance, but you have to build a relationship to be able to speak into their lives, to be able to open up that dialogue and have them trust you enough to tell you what's going on with them, and vice versa. So just establishing that trust is so important in becoming an effective communicator. And lastly, hard work, right? So as we talked about, communication you can get better at it with hard work, with practice. And I just will give a plug for Echelon here because one of the best ways to practice is to talk to students. So we visit the students at Kaulawela Elementary and Like Like Elementary about 5 times a year. And we talk to them about generosity, kindness, compassion, service. And at the end of the year, they get an award. And so every time we go out to see them, we are building relationship because we get to see them over and over again. We get to learn their names. We get to know like the rascal ones that need a little more attention. Um, but it's great to be able to practice speaking to students because they're kind of judgy. They can be, but they're not going to judge you if you're not like you don't have the perfect speech or you miss some important point. So it's really a unique opportunity to be involved with Echelon because we get to practice with these kids and it helps us in our professional and personal lives. The other thing I'll just mention is just a few other events. So was with our Thanksgiving Day feast that we volunteered at, and so we were in charge of about 700 volunteers that day. And so being able to communicate the messages that we needed to them to get them where they needed to go, but as well as just talking to such a wide variety of different people at that event. Um, it's really amazing, and you really have to kind of, I mean, part of it is being interested in people and interested in their stories, and that's one thing that I learned. Why I got interested in media and journalism to begin with is because everyone has a story, right? And my job as a journalist was to tell whatever story that people had, and so just being interested in people's lives. Talking to them and getting to know them, it is an amazing opportunity to be able to hone your communication skills. And just lastly, of course, we have kettlebell ringing. Um, if anyone is interested in kettlebell ringing, this is a great opportunity to again hone your communication skills because you get to talk to so many people that come up to you. We're in front of Walmart on Kamoku, and so just the groups of people that come through and you're talking to them and they sharing something about Salvation Army, it really gives you a unique opportunity to be able to talk to so many people. So I encourage you, if anyone is interested in coming to one of our service events, you are all more than welcome. Um, we would love to have you and help you actually hone your communication skills. So does anybody have any questions or
I love the perspective.
yes, she is. Oh, 1 minute. Okay. Oh, we're not time. Yeah. Yeah. I did. I did. Yeah.
Your role.
Okay, so it is a family business. So we do work with reward, right? Yes, we do. We're surrounded by A1A projects. We're over there. We're across the street. Yeah. So I'm kind of like miscellaneous. So I do what my brother asked me to do. Yeah, but HR, workforce development. Yeah, I'm like the gray area HR though. We have black and white HR, and I'm more of like the one that moves between the lines. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Typical.
Yes.
In your experience, especially within the construction industry, we're dealing with all types of personalities, all types of walks of life. How do you find that you de-escalate your communication? Difficult.
Oh, we have to do this all the time because people get into fights on the jobs. Like people, they literally will get into fist fights on the job. And so we always bring them together. I'll pull one person aside, I'll pull the other person aside, I'll have conversation with each of them individually, and then I'll say, okay, can we ho'oponopono? Can we come together? Can we discuss this? And it'll always be in a group. So it's, with myself and with usually our general foreman. And, we want to talk about it. We want to clear the air. And we have to have those conversations over and over and over again. And sometimes it's exhausting, but it's so important to be able to address it immediately and talk about it, because otherwise it's just going to build up. Inevitably someone will explode as there's fight on the job site. So yeah, unfortunately we do have those workers of all types. So yeah. Oh, okay. All right, thank you for joining me. Yeah.